I've invited our next speaker, Gail Taylor, to be here because I think her perspective of farming in a city, but farming with community is really important as we think about the urban context that we are all maybe, will be growing in soon. So Gail made it all the way from DC. It was a long journey, and we're really glad to have you here, Gail. I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. Thanks for inviting me again to speak with you all. It's always fun to come to Clifton Park. It's actually, are we still in Clifton Park?
Yeah.
It's actually the name of the town where I went to high school. So I kind of like coming to this neighborhood. My name is Gail, and I'm the owner and operator of 3 Part Harmony Farm. We're primarily an urban farm located in Washington, D.C. I don't turn on a computer every day, and I only send out an email newsletter about once a month. So if you feel like hearing from me only about once a month, you can sign up here on our sign-up sheet. Just want to talk a little bit about who I am, what I do, the firm that I started, and then take questions from you all in here, maybe what more you'd like to know. And in the meantime, some slides can just scroll in the background. And this is the most tech so far that I've ever gotten, so I won't be as coordinated as Abby talking with each one that goes by, but you're going to see a lot of different slides over the years of our farm and of my community. So first, just to introduce myself, my name is Gail. I've been living in DC since the late 1990s. I studied U.S. foreign policy in Latin America as an undergraduate in upstate New York and moved to DC afterwards to do the political thing. So I worked in the Latin America Solidarity Movement for several years, along with my partner Hendrik, who's in the back. We both worked at School of the Americas Watch. And while that may not seem like it has nothing to do with farming, it has almost everything to do with my farm. That's the community that is the foundation of who is connected with 3 Part Harmony Farm, so that is important and it will come up later. Farming was my quarter-life crisis. In the mid-2000s, Hendrik and I quit our jobs and went to Central America and lived in Guatemala for several months and then lived in Germany for several months. And when we came back to DC, I really wanted to do something different with my time. I wanted to stop working in an office. I wanted to be better connected to my community, and I wanted to have a job where I felt like I had real skills that I could translate to the real world. I really wanted to be able to say that I did something like, I'm a plumber, I'm a teacher, I'm an electrician, I'm a whatever, something like tech, like that I could do with my hands that I felt good about. So I went through that list of things that I could do that I would be proud of. I have no patience, I can't be a teacher. Seemed like being an electrician, a plumber, that was sort of out of my league. So in this phase of trying to find myself and who I would be or who I am, I started volunteering at this farm in Upper Marlboro in exchange for vegetables. I had some friends that had worked there and I liked it. And over the wintertime they offered me a job and I started working part-time. And then I started working full-time. And then I started going to speaking events and workshops like these, like y'all are doing. And I went to those beginner farmer training classes, and then I just sort of got to a point after 5.5 years where I had seen all my other peers graduate and start their own farms, and it seemed like the logical next step was to start my own farm. So I did. So in 2011, I took a year off of farming at Claggett Farm, is where I trained, and I wrote a business plan and scouted land. In that same year, Hendrik and I, along with 3 other people, bought a home in Petworth in Washington, D.C. So we own this home collectively, and when I started imagining this idea of living at a farm 3 days a week, and then driving in for my market and sleeping one night at home, and then driving back out to the farm and living at the farm for a couple nights, and then driving back home and living at home, it was just really exhausting and obviously not possible. So I actually stopped looking for land sort of in the outer skirts near Upper Marlboro and in all those other places where supposedly land is available. And I started thinking for the first time about having a farm in the city. As crazy as that sounded, I had never been an urban farmer. I had never had a garden as a kid. The only thing that I knew how to do was grow vegetables on 20 acres. So that launched me into this whole other adventure of taking those skills that I had learned over the 5.5, 6 years and translating them to a much smaller scale. So that's sort of my story. let's see, how we got started. So when I was scouting land, a lot of the reference point for the places where I wanted to have the farm in DC was like, I need to ride a bike. Okay, so we had this little car, this like two-door hatchback that I had bought from a former coworker that fit a lot more in it than you would imagine. But I decided that if I was gonna like embrace this urban agriculture thing, that I could like get rid of the car and start riding my bike, and so that's what we did. So we got rid of the car, and I just rode my bike around and started scouting out land. My criteria for land was that I was gonna work within a 15-minute bike ride of my home. One of the #1 places, and the majority of the photos that you're seeing here are from a 2-acre site in Brookland, which is in Northeast DC. The property is owned by the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate, and it is sort of like across the street and a couple hundred more meters from the office where I worked in 2002, 2003, 2004. So it's kind of like a neighborhood that I know well, Brookland. I approached the oblate priests about giving me a lease to work at the farm, or to have a farm. And when I approached them, they were like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And these missionary oblates happen to also own a farm in Godfrey, Illinois, so it was sort of like we were on the same page about it. But then they have these like really fancy lawyers on K Street in downtown DC, and they came back and they said, you can't sign a lease with an LLC farm because it would challenge your nonprofit status, and the Office of Tax and Revenue would send you a $50,000 tax bill. So, whoa, brakes on that. I'm not going to pay $50,000 to rent 2 acres. So that launched us into this whole campaign of starting a farm bill in DC, which is what we did. And so for the last 3 years, in the 2012, 13, 14 season, I grew 1/2 acre of vegetables on this 2-acre site with a temporary contract each year that prohibited me from selling what I grew. It actually prohibited any commercial activity on the property whatsoever. It was a contract that I signed as Gail Taylor, recreational gardener, and it even prohibited me from having any connection whatsoever with this farm that I was trying to grow and build on the side. So I suddenly became this split personality kind of thing where I was trying to say, I'm over here and I come 4 days a week and I grow vegetables at this site and we donate them and all these kinds of things. And then on the other side, I'm trying to like build this farm and build this idea and also like sort of extrapolate that onto having this farm bill and getting other people excited about doing it in DC. So for the last 3 years, that's what I've been doing. We've been building the soil on this site. It was kind of like a desert wasteland when we got there, and the pH was 4.5 and all these other things. So we've just been building it up and growing and then doing the farm bill on the side. Before I talk about the farm bill, I just want to say the other thing that we've been doing in these last 3 years, because farmers apparently can't only just do one thing. I also co-founded Community Farming Alliance with my business partner, Zachary Curtis of Good Sense Farm and Apiary. We decided that farming is just too hard to do alone, that you really need to have friends and peers and colleagues. And with inspiration from the Baltimore Farm Alliance, actually, we did a lot of talking to you all here to try to figure out how we could have that in DC. So we formed the Community Farming Alliance, which is a co-op for women, people of color, and gender non-conforming farmers, sort of like this category of farmers that often fall through the cracks. And our main thing is to really support each other, work together, and we also have a multi-farm CSA. So a lot of the things that happen are we buy things together, like we buy tins together. We just unloaded some tins from the back of the car this afternoon. So like if you're gonna buy 1 tin, maybe it costs $1. But if you're 3 farms and you're buying 500 tins, they cost 76 cents. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but when you're looking at your farm budget, it is a big difference actually. So we do those kinds of things. You'll also notice in these, some of these photos are facing the wrong way. I'm sorry, I'm a farmer. You'll also notice in some of these photos are beehives. There are beehives at this property. They are not my hives, they are Good Sense Farms hives. One of the things that I do as a certified pollinator-friendly farm is plant things for the honeybees, but Zachary owns and operates, takes care of the hives, and I just call if there's a problem. It's great. I also, the other member of our farmers co-op is an herbalist, Holly Cabana of Little Redbird Botanicals, and I also grow things for her. I try to really incorporate the idea of doing things like for multiple reasons. Like, I'm gonna grow a tomato because I wanna eat tomatoes, they taste good. Okay, that's easy. But in terms of like simple things like the cover crop that I'm gonna grow, I used to do like the straight, rye, vetch, clover. This is how I learned how to do it every winter. That's what I would do. And then it would just get tilled under. And there was sort of only like one or two purposes to that mixture. Well, last year I switched out the rye and I put in oats. And then now all of a sudden, instead of just having a cover crop, I have a medicinal crop because we harvest those milky oats and Holly makes a tincture out of it that I get back. So these are the kind of ways that our co-op is like thinking about how we can support each other, work together, and we're using the same footprint on this farm to simultaneously grow my own straw. I did kind of try to make straw from those oats, and then, but then also get the medicinal thing out of it. So that's that. So I said I was going to come back to the Farm Bill, and I will just talk about that a little bit. We finally, in December of last year, had a unanimous vote in our city council to pass a Farm Bill in DC, which is pretty amazing. It started when I got turned down for the first time by the oblates for the lease that I wanted. I approached the American University Law School Clinic, and I recruited these law students to do research and help me meet with city council members and draft what became ultimately now this Farm Bill that we have. And my original idea was like, who can pay $50,000 in property taxes every year and be a farmer in the city? And that's not a problem that is unique to urban farms, right? This idea of keeping up with rising property taxes, everybody is dealing with the same situation, urban, rural alike. So then I said, well, how did the rural farms deal with this problem? They have what people out here, maybe a little bit outside of the city, they call the ag tax exemption. And so I did a little research into that. What does that mean? And actually the law students did all the research while I was outside. So it basically means like different states do different ways of using tax rebate, tax incentive, different ways of calculating property tax in the rural areas. And it started in the 70s as a means to sort of like support farmland conservation against the whole like McMansion problem. So we have this problem in DC. They're called condos and liquor stores, and we have too many. And our property taxes are going up. We need an ag exemption in DC. And so this is what I said, and that's basically what we did. So the Farm Bill that we passed has three components. The first one, that's Zachary. The first one is a 90% tax abatement for private property owners who lease their land to farmers. That means if you have a vacant lot that you own that meets the minimum square footage, you can apply through the Office of Tax and Revenue to pay 10% of the assessed value taxes on that property if you're leasing to a farmer. The second part of the Farm Bill mandates that the city find at least 25 vacant lots that are a minimum of 2,500 square feet and lease them for farms. So we're working with the Department of General Services right now to figure out how that's going to work. The third part of our Farm Bill is a tax credit for farmers, and actually anybody can qualify. Grocery stores can qualify the way the law is written. You get, I think it's $2,500 tax credit, up to $2,500, which is 50% of the value of the vegetables or healthy produce that you donate. So all of us are donating produce anyway. The law is basically now saying, now you can claim it on your taxes. So coming full circle, we've been working on these projects for 3 years. I've been trying to build this farm on this property, even though I couldn't sell the vegetables that I grew, and then sort of like doing this lobby campaign underneath to get this Farm Bill that just got passed. Meanwhile, trying to get this farmer co-op off the ground so that we can be economically sustainable and support each other, be a vibrant community. And now tomorrow night, I'm going to negotiate a 3-year lease where I am. So that's pretty exciting. I do want to say, I don't know if that's like positive or negative, or how you take all of these things that I just said. It feels like a lot of struggle and a lot of hustle that we do as farmers sometimes to make it. I do have a part-time job, and I'm not quitting anytime soon. Don't quit your jobs, anybody in here? And just like every farmer who you meet at any farmer conference, or at least the majority of them, my household also survives off of this off-farm income idea. I get health insurance through my partner. I live in a sort of like subsidized housing situation, right? In our house, each person pays for their food based on the percentage of money that they earn. And so I pay the lowest amount. Every month I contribute $25 to our household pantry. And I eat 3 meals a day pretty much from our kitchen. Obviously I'm bringing in vegetables and things like that too, but my house also buys a share from 3 Part Harmony Farm. So in a lot of ways I'm supported every single floor, all 4 floors of our house, just littered with farm stuff. The front porch right now has a refrigerator and a germination chamber for at least the next month. The pictures of the greenhouse that you're seeing are in my backyard with extension cords running through the cat door. Our bedroom, AKA the farm shed and office, also exploding with gloves and knives and hose and, during the winter time, a certain kind of storage, and during the summertime, another kind of storage, right? Like I have a roll of Rimae in my bedroom right now. What else? In the winter time, I wash spinach in my kitchen. Almost every single member of my household has volunteered at the farm. In the first 2 years of my CSA, the pickups were on our front porch. And every single member was a friend of mine. Even last year, the 3rd year of my CSA, there was only one person who I didn't know, or didn't know the person who invited them, and that was someone who came because she knew the herbalist in our CSA. I'm saying these things to give you a really hard understanding of this other idea of community-supported agriculture, which I think not a lot of people talk about, because there's a lot of talk about this explosion of community-supported agriculture, and everybody is talking about different models and how do you do it and which one do you join. And the whole relationship is like this two-way street between person who grows your vegetables and person who eats those vegetables. And that interaction is usually monetary. Sometimes a farm might have like a minimal work requirement. You might have to go 2 Saturdays a month to the farm. But pretty much it's like someone gives you money, you put it in the bank, and you're like going head over heels, working really, really hard to make sure that you're giving these people vegetables every week. And that's a really important part of supporting local agriculture. But I would imagine that my story is not that much different than most of the farmers who are members of Future Harvest CASA. There, you go to have dinner in their homes and you open up that refrigerator and everything in it all the produce in it came from a farm or the farm across the stand at the farmer's market from them, right? Or they bartered for everything that's not produce. Every single floor of their house is totally exploding with farm supplies and storage. The sort of like going from where the farmer begins and ends and where the farm begins and ends is like this messy thing. It's kind of the same. Like at this point, it's people see my face and they think 3 Part Harmony Farm. And I'm in all these photos, which partly has to do with because I don't like taking photos. But because of that, your identity is in this brand that you're creating. And the people who are attracted to supporting that brand are your community. So in the beginning, when I talked about my background being in the Latin American Solidarity movement for over 15 years, that I live in an intentional community, that before we bought our house, we lived in a house for 5 years in Adams Morgan with another community that is in all of these photos. It's because I really want all of you who are thinking about starting your own farm to really think about that, how important that is, to know who your community is and where they are, because they are going to be your customers, possibly your only customers. Even after they buy your vegetables, they're going to buy your t-shirts. They're going to be the ones liking you on Facebook. They're going to be the ones bringing you dinner, because even though you're growing vegetables, you don't have time to cook for yourself. They're going to be the ones there volunteering on the crop mob day. All of these things. Making your logo. My sister-in-law made my logo. Taking the photos, doing all the social media. My partner does all of that. These are sort of like all these intangible things. Everything that I just said, no money is changing hands. You can't put a dollar value on that, but my farm wouldn't exist without that. And so I think you've seen some photos of like us at protests, us making banners, us making puppets. In our household, April and November are 2 really big months because School America's Watch has events those months, and my sister-in-law always comes from Germany in April to help us make puppets and banners and things like that, and then sometimes make signs for the farm. So those are the kinds of things that I really want to encourage everybody to think about when we talk about community-supported agriculture, that at the end of the day, your community is really important. And I do deposit checks a lot this month getting ready for May. But a lot of the things that I deposit are all of those things also that my community gives me, that I drove here in my roommate's car that she lets me borrow. Just everything. I could keep going on and on and on, but you get the idea. And you have to think about all these things for yourselves too. So I think that's enough. I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah, and thanks for having me.
Would you change your road if you could? Like, I mean, you always have an option to change, but if you could change the past 5 years, would you?
No. If I could change the past 5 years, would I? No. Sometimes I wake up and it's hard. Yeah, of course. When you make that decision to quit your job and work for yourself, it doesn't matter if you're farming, whatever you're doing. That's hard. I mean, honestly, like, if it's Sunday and it's your only day off and the temperature changes and you have to drive to the farm to cover up the tomato plants with rebate, like, that's it. You know, the buck stops with you. And those are the kinds of things that are hard. But, you know, it also means every day I wake up and I do what I love. Nobody can tell me where to be when. One thing I really love about farming is that there's, like, this direct correlation between, like, the harder that you work, the more you get out. And obviously, like, a lot of things are out of your control. Bugs and weather and fungus and all these things. But really, like, if you work your ass off, people are gonna taste that. Yeah.
Did you say the farm is on the church property? And if so, what's your relationship with the church? Do they get involved or?
That's a good question, and because I forgot to mention, in the Farm Bill in DC, there's actually a nonprofit status exemption, which means that even though it's privately owned, you won't have to pay even that 10% of the taxes because there's an exemption. The priests of this community are mostly older. Some of them come down and like to walk through the garden. One of them is very, very involved, and he's like my #1 advocate. Yeah.
I remember last year you talked about focusing on some cash crops. How'd that go?
Yeah. I tried to figure out how to make money. Even though, I mean, the reality is I know that selling vegetables is never gonna I won't say never, I mean, that's like a defeatist thing. But I think it's hard to make a living growing vegetables. It's something you do for love, not for money. I know there's people who say like we can make $1 million on 1,000 square feet or whatever like that. But I just haven't found that to be true. So I have all these like side ventures that I do. One of them is growing seedlings. In the first year, the only thing that I had that I actually owned was that 7x10 in my backyard. I knew that we owned the home and I knew we were paying the taxes on it. And so the only thing I had was that greenhouse, and I turned it into a moneymaker. So I sell these seedlings at local hardware stores. And we actually have a really great relationship with the hardware store that's about 4 blocks from our house. I was just there this morning to talk about delivering plants on Friday. The store is owned by a local businesswoman named Ann, and she asked me if we could have better labels for our plants. I mean, honestly, in the first year, they were wooden stakes, what I had. So she hired a local artist to make this new label for us. She paid for it. And then we printed them, and so this is one of my side hustles, so we sell these prints. Let's see, what else did I do? Zachary and I have 2 years in a row grown like cash crops on acreage out in the country. 1 year we grew sweet potatoes on the Eastern Shore, and there are some photos of us planting sweet potatoes in here. And then last year we grew garlic in Marshall, Virginia. And then my new cash crop that I do is, I don't think that I have that with me, but I am starting to grow teas, and I'm getting into the cut flower business, which I think a lot of you all are as well. I think it's a really great idea. I mean, cut flowers are obviously an untapped market for the organic growers. It seems like that, and it's like bottomless. So I sell bouquets to my CFA members. And we're going to a farmer's market this year for the first time, and I'm going to sell bouquets too. I'm still not like rolling in it, but I pay for our staff. We have 3 part-time staff people, and I think I'm going to pay myself for the first time this year, which is like, wow. Yes.
Are you still growing other herbs for the herbalist? Is the herbalist being able to source herbs for the use in production or for selling to other outlets?
Yeah, I mean, Holly is a grower and a forager in her own right. She keeps an herb garden at Claggett where we all used to work. There's like 2 common themes in this story. Like everybody I know works at School of the Americas Watch or at Claggett Farm. So everybody in our co-op used to work at Claggett, and Holly has a garden out there. I do grow a little bit for her, but she actually grows a lot of her own stuff. My whole thing was like trying to do something that I kind of already did and have it work for both of us at the same time.
I just want to say that I think the community that you're describing is sort of the, I'm not going to be very articulate, but I think it's the answer to everything that ails us in our society. We have to come together and take care of each other, because otherwise it's just not going to happen. And to do it over food, for that to be the one seems like such a natural. So I really admire it, and I really enjoy the story that you both very much.
Yeah.
What kind of advice could you give to farmer wannabe?
The first thing that I always say is learn hands-on what to do. And maybe it's because I'm coming from the perspective of someone who didn't grow up on a farm and is totally adult trained in this. But I just really see and hear about a lot of people like getting bit by this bug after they read a book or woof for 3 weeks. And I really just think it's important to really put in the time to learn what to do. And I honestly, I mean, even as an urban farmer, like the training that I got on 20 acres was really invaluable. And I even like am sort of mentoring someone right now who I send out to Claggett to do training there, because there's just like only so many things that I can teach you on our half an acre. We do almost everything by hand. You know, you can like practice with the Planet Junior and like 200 grow feet, but it's just like that every day, like doing it, the monotony of it, but like getting faster and better at it. I don't know, it's just really, you just have to do it. Yeah.
What about rodents?
Rodents?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know what to say. I don't have that problem.
Oh,
I think it depends where. I didn't talk about this very much, but one of the other things that I do is backyard style CSA, so I also grow in different people's backyards, and in the first 2 years, the bulk of my CSA shares came from like every Thursday I would go around to all those backyards and gather everything together. And, you know, people offered me their backyards that I realized were not suitable for farming because of rats, and I just stopped growing there.
Does anybody have any solutions for that? I know with mice, some people just put mouse traps by, but I don't know about rats or.
Oh, I thought you were talking about rats. I mean, I had mice in my shed, I said traps.
Grow what they don't eat.
Yeah.
What about the bees on the top?
They get protected for the winter. Again, my business partner does all of that. So, you know, as they're getting to colder temperatures, Zachary does things like close up the hole a little bit more, do all kinds of preventative things against all of the critters that will try to get inside and rob the hive and that kind of thing.
Okay, how do you have any problems?
There's 3. We started with 4, but we lost one really quickly.
Right now, have you built back up or?
No. Zachary's business model as a beekeeper is really interesting in that they don't have hives on any property that is like good sense farm property. So Zachary has, I think, almost 10 hives on Raddick's farm site in Upper Marlboro, which is a farm that's owned and operated by somebody who I also work with at Clifton Park. And then there's like hives on the rooftop of Red for the City, which is Zachary's day job, and then there's 3 at my farm. So it's really like this idea of how beekeepers and vegetable farmers can be like this symbiotic relationship thing where I'm getting pollinators and then Zachary's getting honey, and both of us get to do what we're good at. And I went to that beekeeping class and I'm just like in one ear out the other, I'm gonna stick to plants. So we just kind of like both focus on one thing. Yeah, I have.
What type of one, do you compost on your farm, and if so, what type of compost do you use?
Yeah, I don't really compost on my farm. I'm a vegetable farmer. We put all of our leaves and plants when we pull them out for the winter and whatever when we're washing, all of that compostable material is in a pile. And it sits there. And we flip it once a year. But we don't really, I haul in, oh gosh, in 3 years, 120 cubic yards of compost. I think last year I spent $1,600 on compost. This is probably going to be a very unpopular thing to say in this circle, but I don't really think that it's possible to be producing all of the compost that we need in the city. And so I just don't even pay attention to my compost pile. It just kind of sits there.
That may be why you don't have such a problem with rats.
I guess it's just like a passive pile of decomposing stuff. I'm sort of like partnering with this permaculture organization called Nature's Friends, and they're going to do a youth entrepreneurship cooperative project with sunflowers, and they've been building people culture beds on our property. And they started using the compost that was from our first year, and I'm just like shocked every time they take something from that pile that is broken down as much as it has, because I honestly am not really looking at it.
Is that permaculture organization in DC?
Yeah, they also have an office in Virginia. If you're looking for somebody to teach young people permaculture classes, Dele does. She teaches at George Mason and with some other folks. Yeah, I recommend it. 2 more questions? Is that what 2 means?
Yeah.
Okay, or 2 more minutes.
3 minutes, 2 more questions.
2 questions in 2 minutes. Are you ready to ask? What's your name?
Marv.
Marv.
Um,
Oh, you guys didn't tell me your name. Okay.
what type of plants do you use, do you plant to support the bees out there?
Well, you know, a lot of the cover crops that I grow are all flowering and supporting the bees. So we grow a lot of buckwheat on our farm, and then all of the clovers I do. I grow a lot of basil, and it seems like every time I'm harvesting it, I get stung. And then, you know, what's interesting with the pollinator certification when you go to sign up on that website, it's not just about the honeybees, which obviously we all know. So there are all these other things that you have to do to support pollinator attractors. Like we have piles of wood that's just kind of like we don't touch it, making sure that you put water out. So there are all these different things that you can do. All right, last question. Yes.
You mentioned like so many things that your main hustle, your hustle,
Yeah.
So you know, it's still like really nebulous to me. Can you like, I don't know, walk me through the season of how you are, you know, getting to the educated, getting to the, you know, so how are you getting to your paid crop, plus your part-time job, plus the season, yeah.
Right, that's a great question. Yeah. And I didn't say my part-time job, I manage a yoga studio. Well, I work 7 days a week, especially from February until mid-June when I finally cut off the ceiling sales. So I work 7 days a week. And I have a schedule where I'm like, okay, right now Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'm in Brookland. And then on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I go to my job. And then like maybe on Monday and Wednesday, I'm in the backyard with the ceilings. And then also on Wednesday, I ride my bike past those backyards and check on the plants there. And I just kind of like spread out my day, mostly around like in the morning and then in the afternoon. Because my greenhouse isn't on automatic anything. So my entire schedule is based on every lunchtime, every dinner time, anytime when the sun comes out or the rain starts, is like I have to be able to bike back home to go to the greenhouse. And then maybe like one Saturday a month, we drive out to the country. I don't know if that makes you want to quit or... I will tell you, you know, that's all what I do. I will say, this is what I don't do. I don't go to meetings. I don't turn on a computer every day. And I almost don't do speaking events. Right? Right? You have to know what you're saying no to. And the whole point of creating this lifestyle where you're not making any money, but you're like happy in the sun all the time, is that you get to say no to what you don't want to do. So become a farmer. No, but do it with your community. It's fun. We have a lot of fun at the farm. Come on out if you want to volunteer. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We have great conversations and solve many of the world's problems. Thanks so much. Thank you.